In 1972, near Varna, Bulgaria, 22-year-old Raicho Marinov was digging a channel with a backhoe to lay high-voltage cables. Suddenly, however, he noticed that he was digging up some objects along with the dirt. He immediately stopped the machine and got down to take a closer look. Then he saw various metal articles and tools. When he had finished working, he collected the artifacts and took them to his home village of Chenge, now Asparuhovo, where archaeological excavations of a Neolithic settlement were taking place at the time. There he handed them over to Dimitar Zlatarsky, curator of the museum in the town of Dalgopol. Raicho handed over with a protocol 27 gold objects, 6 copper tools, and 3 flint plates. Back then, the young man did not even know that he had discovered something that would change world history forever. On October 30th, the artifacts were handed over to research assistant Mikhail Lazarov and curator Alexander Minchev, who collected the finds for storage at the Varna Archaeological Museum. On November 2nd, Raicho Marinov was accompanied by a huge specialized group and police to show the place where the objects were found. It has been established that a necropolis dating back some 7,000 years exists at this site. Most people in the world today have heard of the great civilizations of Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, and China, which are known as the earliest known human cultures characterized by urbanization, organized governance, and even technical innovation. Almost no one knows, however, that in 4600 BC, when Sumerian civilization was emerging, the more ancient and amazingly advanced Varna civilization was already working gold and creating gold jewelry and ornaments. It was the first civilization in the world to process the precious metal. Even in these early years of mankind, the Varna people had knowledge of the number pi and the golden ratio. Not only that, but there are clues to suggest that the Varna civilization most likely passed on knowledge and influenced the Egyptian civilization, even though it came into existence almost 2,000 years later. You'll find out how this all happened in the next few minutes. The mysterious civilization that emerged on the shores of the lakes on the Bulgarian Black Sea coast about 7,000 years ago is often called the Black Sea Atlantis. More than 50 years ago, archaeologists in Bulgaria stumbled upon a huge necropolis dating back to the Copper Age of the 5th millennium BC. Not only does it contain the oldest worked gold ever discovered, but it also opens a new chapter in world history by revealing the existence of a hitherto unsuspected, highly advanced civilization. The many burials unearthed are a treasure trove for specialists, but it is only when they come to grave number 43 that archaeologists realize the true significance of the find. There are carefully laid the remains of a man of high social status, buried with untold riches. More gold was found in this burial than in the rest of the world during this period. In addition, a stone axe, interpreted as a scepter, was found with its handle overlaid with gold, leading scholars to speculate that it was the burial of a ruler of this highly developed community. It is assumed that in addition to political power, he also held religious power. The man came to be known as the Varn. The skeleton was found in an erect position on his back. According to the anthropological study, the Varnian was about 45 years old. Behind the skeleton's left shoulder was uncovered a group of 11 gold objects likened to cabarets, some of which were found with the blades up. At the left shoulder were laid 1 copper and 1 flint spearhead, pointing north. At the lower end of the copper spear, below the left humerus, a ceramic bowl with 7 carnelian beads laid on it was found. 11 gold rings had been placed around its head, and large gold appliques were found under and around the head, facing downwards with their polished portion. On his left arm was found a bracelet made from the shell of a spondylus clam, which had been broken and remade, the places of the breaks being covered with gold settings. This shows the incredible craftsmanship and finesse of the workmanship. The list of gold ornaments and other artifacts found is endlessly long, but something previously unseen makes an impression. The Varna man had a massive, gold condom-like wrapping placed over his male dignity. Why? Today it still remains a mystery. Another equally important mystery raises interesting questions. The Varna civilization seems to have differed in its manners from those observed in the interior. After some research, it appears that the ritual of burials here is quite different. If in the interior of Bulgaria, the orientation of the graves of the ancient people was east-west, here the direction of all 325 graves studied is northeast, southwest. But the differences do not stop there. They are also highlighted by the positions of the buried people. In the Varna necropolis, most of the men are stretched out and the women are in the fetal position, lying on the right side. Inland, all the buried are lying on their left side and crouched. Did the Varna people know anything more? Possibly. But before we get there, there is one more very important part of the burial process that will enlighten us on how advanced this mysterious civilization really was. It is estimated that there are about 500 graves in total, with 325 of them found and examined. Over 22,000 fine objects have been found in them, including over 3,000 made of gold weighing a total of over 6 kilograms. Other valuable relics include copper, high-quality flint tools, jewelry, Mediterranean mollusk shells, pottery, obsidian blades, and beads. Analysis of the graves reveals that this ancient culture had a highly structured society whose elite members were buried in shrouds with gold ornaments. Their eternal chambers were filled with treasures. Other members of the society had simple burials with limited grave inventories. The objects unearthed so far and examined during the excavations indicate that goldsmithing in Varna began around 4600 BC. With the progress of the local culture, craftsmen mastered the metallurgy of copper and gold. The inhabitants now had something extremely valuable that they began to trade. Contacts with neighbors to the north and south increased, and trade links were established in the Black Sea and Mediterranean regions, which was of great importance for the development of society. The deep bay along which the Varna settlements are situated provides a convenient harbor for ships sailing across the Black Sea, and Varna is becoming a prosperous commercial center. The expanding trade allowed the metallurgists of the time to amass untold riches, which helped a social gap to develop rapidly. The metal masters stood at the top of the chain, followed by the merchants in the middle of the ladder and the farmers who constituted the lowest class. This research, and what we will talk about in just a few seconds, makes it certain for researchers from all over the world to conclude that the Varna culture was not a small and insignificant society that appeared only to evaporate quickly and ingloriously from the annals of history. On the contrary, it was an unprecedentedly advanced civilization, more ancient than the empires of Mesopotamia and Egypt, and the first known culture to make gold jewelry and other objects. Professor Raicho Marinov made perhaps one of the most impressive discoveries related to Varna gold, establishing a link with the ancient Egyptian measurement system, which used the royal cubit as a unit of measurement. He discovered that this unit of measurement is present in gold figurines, tiles, bone idols of harmony, and in gilded pottery created during the Varna culture. Interestingly, the pyramids of Giza were erected 2,000 years after these objects were buried near the shores of the Black Sea. However, the coherence and use of the same mathematical precision in the making of the objects from the Varna necropolis is a fact. Marinov reveals not only this, he also establishes the presence of the golden section, represented by the number phi, in gold objects. The correspondence between the dimensions of the gold objects and those of the Pyramid of Cheops is striking. An example is the height of one of the famous gold bulls, which is exactly 9 times the diameter of the gilded tower, which in turn is exactly 1/9 the size of a king's cubit. But how does this happen despite the large time difference? And if this ancient civilization was so well developed and rich, what happened to it? The area where the necropolis is located is near today's Varna Lake, where traces of agriculture and cattle breeding have been found. It is hypothesized that the disappearance of the Varna civilization was the result of a combination of factors. Towards the end of the 5th millennium BC, climate change began to turn large areas of arable land into swamps. Summers began to become drier, winters colder, and mounted warriors from the steppes began to invade more frequently. Although the Varna civilization has left no direct descendants, the members of this ancient culture have bequeathed many lasting artifacts and traditions and set the stage for the emergence of subsequent civilizations around the world. Their skills in metallurgy were unparalleled throughout the world, and their society demonstrated many traits of a highly advanced and developed civilization. They also developed the social structure of a centralized authority, a person or institution to oversee and ensure the proper functioning of society. In them, we find all the basic principles of modern society, a model of civilization that we still follow today. In his bilingual book, The Cosmic Roots of the First Civilization, the eminent scholar Professor Raicho Marinov presents more in-depth mathematical evidence that the proportions used in the construction of the objects from the Varna gold treasure are the same that were later used by the Sumerians and are the basis for the construction of the Egyptian pyramids. These conclusions were made after many measurements of objects from the necropolis with the most accurate technique in the world. For him, one of the most important questions is how knowledge of the planetary and ultimately cosmic proportions found in the Varna treasure was transmitted and how they passed on to other cultures. The professor is convinced, however, that ongoing archaeological excavation and research will confirm that this is the earliest civilization to have attained the knowledge of cosmic proportions and succeeded in transmitting it in the form of a code to later cultures that left the most significant monuments of antiquity throughout the world. Marinov theorizes that the Varna culture was the first civilization in the world to survive the flood, after which it found its continuation in Mesopotamia and Egypt. The Bulgarian professor's research is the basis for 3 National Geographic films and 1 Discovery Channel film. Another interesting fact is that a few years ago, near Pazarjik, Bulgaria, the city of birds, was discovered. There, worked gold was found that was 200 to 300 years older than the items in the Varna Chalcolithic necropolis. The discovery has yet to be investigated. However, another deposit just a few kilometers from the one found in Varna has been very well studied and has been identified as the oldest salt mining center in the world. Around 5600 BC, or about 1,000 years before the Sumerians, Neolithic farmers from present-day Thrace left their homes, crossed the Balkan Mountains, and settled around the salt springs near the present-day town of Provadia. They did so because of the overwhelming need to obtain the substance vital to their existence, which we now call table salt. Salt has also been the first money for several millennia. Thus, the new settlers established the world's oldest salt mining center, using a technology that is still in use today: the evaporation of salty spring water in ceramic vessels. The products were traded as far south as the Aegean Sea. Production began with the use of specially constructed dome kilns located inside the dwellings. Due to the high demand for salt, 2 or 3 centuries later, the technology was perfected, and production was moved outside the settlement to a production center. Interesting for us to share, did you know this? What do you think did the beginnings of civilization actually start in Bulgaria and more recently in present-day Thrace? Share in the comments. Support us by sharing the video and subscribing to the channel.